the honor and just having fun being able to interview a bunch of the speakers that have been presenting during the meeting. And today I have Callie Babbitt, Dr. Callie Babbitt. A brief intro. Also, how are you doing? How's your meeting going?
It's been great so far. Really exciting to see so many dynamic talks on so many different subjects and a lot of enthusiasm about keeping the spirit of science going.
Where are you flying in from?
Rochester, New York. So from cold and snowy to cold and snowy.
Okay, well, don't love that for you, but I'm glad that you're here. All right, so Dr. Callie Babbitt is a professor of sustainability at Rochester Institute of Technology. Her research group aims to create circular economy solutions to recover value from waste streams, including food waste, consumer electronics, plastic, and lithium-ion batteries. That sounds amazing, but we're going to be talking about, you have a talk later at 4 o'clock in room 309 called Wasted Food, Research Partnerships for Circular Economy Solutions. So before we talk about circular economy solutions, as someone, I don't know if this is like too rare or not rare or not common, but I think about food waste a lot. As I'm prepping food, sometimes I feed the scraps to my dog, but then when the scraps can't go to my dog, it's going down to the garbage and then going out to restaurants. Like, just to think about the amount of volume of food that we have and how much of it just ends up in the landfill. Why do we have so much waste?
When you start adding up the amount of food waste that we generate in the U.S., the numbers are really staggering. About 30% of the food that we grow never gets eaten. And we waste it at a lot of places for a lot of different reasons. Some gets lost during agriculture when there's crops that don't peak at the right time or that are not perfect, get left on the field. When we have food with blemishes or cosmetic damages that consumers just don't like and it gets thrown away at the grocery store. And of course, a lot of times our eyes are bigger than our stomach, so we have extra left on our plate at restaurants. We all bought that bag of spinach with the best intentions on New Year's Day, aiming to eat healthy, and then it wilted away in our crisper
the fresh
drawer.
bag of spinach with the new bag of spinach.
Exactly. and of course, there's a lot of times there's events like this one when you go out to eat at a restaurant, when you stay at a hotel, when you visit a hospital, hopefully unlikely, or when you go to a conference and eat at venues. There's always more food produced than we ultimately need. And so there's a lot of systemic reasons why we waste food that have to do with our manufacturing processes and inefficiencies in the system. But there's a lot of behavioral reasons as well that we as consumers end up throwing away food.
I know this is probably like anecdotal, but like I've seen on some YouTube channels that cover kind of like just sustainability and climate change of just how, sometimes restaurants aren't even allowed to give the wasted food away, even if the food is still good. And so I've seen just on the brief research of what you do that our stuff is mostly just like a linear cycle of just we produce the food, then it just goes to waste. So what are you anticipating in talking about a circular economy? What is that?
Well, I guess I'd first start by saying that calling it food waste is the wrong thing to do, because waste means something that doesn't have any value. And excess and wasted food still has a lot of value. We discard perfectly edible, healthy, nutritious food every day. It's not waste, it's just surplus. It's in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's food that we could reduce the excess from by smarter purchasing strategies, by understanding what consumers actually want, by using advances in digital technology to kind of predict demand a little bit better. But we could also rescue that food and redistribute it to organizations and people who can use it. And then finally, even those fractions of food waste that are truly what we might think of as waste, like the spoiled spinach, meat, trimmings, food that went bad, off-spec products at manufacturing, still has value. It has carbon in it, it has nitrogen and phosphorus, it has water. All of those resources that went into growing and manufacturing it are still there. And so that's where we can do something we call valorizing it, which is a fancy way of saying creating value from what would otherwise be waste. So we can employ a lot of different technologies, everything from backyard composting to really high-tech chemical extraction technologies, and we can actually recover that value and put it back into the economy. And that's what the idea of circular economy is all about. Stop thinking about things as waste and thinking about them as resources that we can recover value from. So our session today at 4 is going to have myself and 2 other experts in this field who are thinking about lots of different ways of identifying waste and turning it into valuable resources.
When it comes to proposing new solutions that way, and knowing that this is kind of like a systemic issue, I guess, or a systemic way that we're thinking about this, does there have to be like an incentive to get people to buy into the circular economy? Or, like, how do we rally people into getting interested in this idea?
Well, the incentive, the carrot and the stick, maybe to think about, are different for different kind of stakeholders in the system. So for retailers, manufacturers, grocery stores, waste is cost. It's an expense. It means that you're putting money into something that then you're throwing away, and it also is something you usually have to pay to discard. So companies pay what's called a tipping fee to have someone haul off this waste at the end of the day. And food waste is heavy and wet, so it's expensive. So there's a huge economic rationale for businesses to be part of the solution, especially if you can then take what would have been waste and turn it into a new value stream. But most grocery stores aren't really in the business of, composting or using anaerobic digestion or other technologies to treat food waste. And so that's where partnerships and innovation really comes into play, because we need the systems in place to actually be able to help recover that value. But a lot of times it's also the consumer. We surveyed consumers in New York State recently about composting and asked them, do you separate your household food waste from other trash? And a lot of them said, I would love to do that, but it's gross. And so there's also this part about food that has this sort of visceral aspect to it. It can be a little stinky. It can be a little messy sometimes, especially until you kind of understand how to best separate it and manage it. And so there's also sort of this behavioral challenge that we can get around. But a key motivator for a lot of consumers is that feeling of guilt, of waste. The average American household spends about $1,500 a year on food that never gets eaten. And so there's also an economic motivation, because if we can help reduce this waste, lower costs, and it might actually end up with savings and benefit to consumers.
So who would be the key players in like the circular economy? Like, is it only just the businesses, or are the only the corporations or companies that are producing large volumes of waste? You mentioned consumers, but I guess like who, what does the circular economy look like?
This is really one of those tricky societal issues that we're never going to solve in an academic silo, and we're never going to solve it with academics alone. To really enable this circular economy, we have to be looking at the entire system, from the food producers, the people who are processing it along the way, the end users, us, the consumers. And then we also have to think about how to best enable that. So in some cases, it's through policy. There's a number of states that have now enacted legislation requiring companies who generate like 2 tons a week or more of food waste to do something other than discard it. We have put policy in place to protect grocery stores who want to donate food in good faith, to protect them from liability. And there's also a number of kind of new business models coming about, like community composting, where they'll bring you a bucket, you can put your food scraps in and haul it off and compost it. You don't have to touch it or get dirty. So there's kind of a space in here for economics. There's a space in here for new technology, new business models. But there also is a place where we have to recognize that the insights and the innovations here don't just come from academics. And one of the examples that I'm going to share in the session this afternoon is about a partnership with our research network and Albertsons. You might have heard of them. They're a big grocery store. And we've recently gone through a partnership with them where we actually asked them what they thought would work to improve food donations. And we didn't ask the corporate executives. We went into the stores and we spent time with the workers. We spent time with that frontline workforce, observed how they operate, asked them about what they saw as the barriers, because there's so much knowledge and expertise in their lived experience. And so by harnessing the knowledge that doesn't just come from academia, that comes from all parts of this food supply chain, we're able to come up with creative solutions that we would have never thought of otherwise. So it really does require a systemic effort with everyone involved.
And so working and partnering with Albertsons right now, is this just more of like a proof of concept to eventually pitch for like different types of policies that can be enacted like later down the stream? I guess like what is the near-term goal, and then what would be like the long-term vision?
Well, I'll start with the long-term vision. The U.S. has a very ambitious goal to cut food loss and waste in half. We're not really doing a great job of meeting that target, but that's where we ultimately want to get to. And to do that, we're going to need a lot of different solutions put in place at a lot of different places. So what worked at Albertsons might not work somewhere else. So a large part of what we're doing through this research network that I'll be talking about later this afternoon is figuring out what the right solution is at the right place and the right time. Now, that might usually entail lots and lots of case studies and trial and error, but we're actually trying to develop some generalizable insights by developing what are called typologies, kind of categories of regional systems. Like, is there a certain urban system? They generate a certain type of waste, a certain mix of waste, there's certain kind of infrastructure and treatment options available. So in those kinds of regions, a certain system might work. So in the short term, we're trying to understand how to kind of test some of these solutions, but then ultimately scale them up so we'll meet these big aggressive targets to reduce food and waste.
What has been the biggest barrier in trying to at least get people to be a part of the case study or at least buy into the circular economy?
I think one of the challenges that we've uniquely faced in this particular research network is that it's funded under a mechanism at a National Science Foundation called Convergence. And this is an idea where you have deep integration of knowledge across disciplines and valuing knowledge from multiple actors, including those outside of academia. And y'all, it's really hard to do sometimes. When you put a chemist, an ecologist, and an engineer, and an anthropologist, and a food scientist, and a nutrition expert, and a data scientist into a room together, much as all the other disciplines that our network includes, it takes a little bit of time. We all might be saying the same word and meaning something totally different. Mm-hmm. We all have different professional objectives, publishing standards, different kinds of audiences, different jargon. So it takes a little bit of time to actually develop trust. And it's challenging in the traditional funding environment to actually invest that kind of time to either really get to know other disciplines or to get to know these stakeholders in the community. But it's worth it because the solutions that come out of it are richer and deeper than what we could all individually come up with in our own field, our own domain.
Yeah, it makes me think of, so I studied the science of science communication and we tend to have I forgot what the theory is, but we're always we're the experts, we're talking down to you. But when it comes to creating solution, it really comes down to more participatory and dialogue type of communication where we're bringing everyone to the table to have it. But because of what you're mentioning, that everyone's jargon is different, everyone, will mean something, but it's not will have a different meaning. It really makes it hard. So I guess what will be, is there a common ground of okay, this is, I guess how do you organize having so many different types of people to kind of have a beneficial conversation to be productive rather than just focusing on, well, this is what you said, but I don't think it's that,
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. And that's why I think the topic of wasted food makes for such a compelling platform to try to achieve this convergence on. Because food and wasting food is something we all have intimately experienced. We all know about this. We all see it in our daily lives. We all understand the connection. And we can all relate to the potential negative social, economic, and environmental impacts that come from our current inefficiencies in the food system. And so I think a large part of achieving these kinds of deep collaboration are organizing ourselves around real societal issues that we all can understand and all see relevance to, and that we can actually see in our own lives and in our communities. But it also, I think, involves surrounding yourself with people that you're comfortable with, willing to take risks, and are willing to invest the time to kind of develop that trust with each other. And there's a lot of innovation that's required. So new thinking, creative thinking, and innovative solutions that we haven't tried before. So there's really room at the table, no food pun intended, for all of us to kind of be part of this really important solution. And I'll also just mention that this is my first time at a AAAS conference, so it's been a really wonderful experience, but I was also delighted to see so many sessions on science communication, data visualization, working with policy, talking to journalists, because I think all of these are really important transversal skills that are also needed when it comes to sort of developing these deep, meaningful collaborations and then translating them for impact.
Very fruitful conversation. And just a reminder, Dr. Babbitt has a talk today at 4 o'clock in room 303 or 309 to further dive deeper into the circular economy. But we have time for like 1 or 2 questions before I bring up my next guest, if anyone is interested. Yay! Okay, woman in the green shirt.
Oh.
Or person.
Thank you so much. My name is Natasha Dutchich. I'm a AAAS Science and Tech Policy Fellow in Congress, working on the minority side. When it comes to food waste, food surplus, a lot of us within the field know that food waste contributes to methane emissions, and there's the issue of making sure that we have a lot of food, but it's not getting to the right people. I guess when you're trying to make a policy argument, aside from the economic incentive, how do you address this issue to colleagues across the aisle who are against the sustainability and the climate impacts that food waste has?
Absolutely. And while you're absolutely right, food and food waste has enormous environmental impacts. All of the resources that go into growing the food are lost when we waste it. And in the US, most food is landfilled. So that's leading to the degradation of that food waste in the oxygen-free environment, produces methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas. So obviously there's an environmental benefit, but that doesn't always sway folks because not everyone cares about the same kind of environmental issues across the board. And so this is the other reason why wasted food is so compelling, because we can look in our own communities and we can see people who, for different reasons, need food. We can see the cost, the direct cost to businesses of having to manage wasted food. So even if you made this argument entirely on an economic basis, you could make a strong case for wanting to reduce inefficiencies, get food to the people who can use it, save money for businesses, save the cost of landfill disposal, and then create new value streams that then can be sold for additional revenue. But we can also look at a deeper level. You know, a lot of times the food that we recover goes into biological processes where we're recovering nutrients and putting those back into farmlands. And that's a big benefit for agricultural systems and farmers. They actually, you know, we do a lot of management of manure in the United States. And it turns out that if you mix food waste and manure together, this sounds so glamorous and exciting, you get a lot better yield out of biogas digesters. So there's a benefit for those farmers who are operating those. And certainly from a social standpoint, you know, we, in Rochester, New York, we grow a lot of apples. Apples get thrown away for the tiniest little bling on them. But we have a partner in the city who collects these apples with small blemishes, slices them, and then sends them to after-school programs at schools. So even if you don't care about the environment, you can still care about school kids getting a healthy after-school snack that leaves them nourished for the rest of the afternoon. So there's a lot of opportunity for sort of leveraging solutions towards food waste that don't just rely on an environmental argument, but really speak to our goals societally to save money, to make people healthier, and to make people's lives better.
I think this is a great note to end on. A round of applause for Dr. Babbitt. Thank you so much. And as Andy Knoll in the building, okay, please welcome on stage. Thank you so much.